Hey guys, I'm going to stay here with another bud. Greg Idra Fields, the American Macro Machine, fresh off of his victory off of Combat Easy, has re-queued, and you can bet Combat re-queued because he asked Idra to do so. Combat X, the talented but incredibly cantankerous villain of the StarCraft 2 scene, a Protoss playing loudmouth named Wasif Khan, who made guide videos on how to cheese and abuse. He lost to Chill in Brood War in an exciting best of 5, Chill being a caster that was seen as way below Combat's level. Combat embarrassed himself. He would go on to play Parting at WCG Worlds 2012, take a game off of him, and almost beat him in the series. In general, he's considered the villain of the StarCraft 2 scene, and I think he contributes positively to the scene because not only is he an interesting antagonist that you can really enjoy rooting against, but the fact that he made so many good guide videos meant that he did way more harm than good overall, like on some Buddhism shit. If you were to like rank Combat's actions and like, oh, is Combat in for good or bad karma? Like, despite the filth you're gonna see typed in this game, which I encourage you with reverence to read, he wasn't really that bad of a guy. Like, he's a guy that sort of played on the edge, so to speak, and probably had a screw loose a little bit, if we're being honest, but it's just so fun to watch. And to look at a guy like Idra, an honorable, defensive, methodical macro player, of course Macro Terran in Brood War, Macro Zerg in Star 2, this is a guy who always was reactive, and early in 2011, which is when this game was played, Idra was still playing in the GSL, which is, and was since the beginning of time, the very best Korean tournament in StarCraft 2. It's very, very difficult for non-Koreans to even qualify for GSL. Idra made deep runs in GSL. He made it all the way to round of 8 before running into close positions Metalopolis and Jungle Basin against the talented Gorilla Terran Liquid Jinro. I bring that series up because we're sort of on the heels of this timeline-wise. That series occurred in January and this one occurred in March. I absolutely love the back and forth here because you've got to consider a guy like Combat X who is just so insidiously cantankerous and over the top and personal with his criticisms. You can be tempted just to mute him because this is the sort of guy that will type, and if you don't respond 30 seconds later, he's not shutting up. He's going to be typing, this time in all caps. So for Idra to be able to just swat away the dim-witted insults of Combat Easy here with the same absolute crisp, methodical brilliance that we see him deflect the pushes and cheesy nonsense of Combat away with. Idra's really putting on a masterclass here verbally and in game. Idra scouting here, notice he mineral tricked there. That means if there's a zealot out, the drone will go right through. You know, a lot of times I forget that some of you guys have just started playing this game in the last couple years. It's sort of hard for me to shadow box mentally, like, okay, when I started playing Star 2 like over a decade ago, like what did I know and what did I not know? Like in StarCraft 2, you can do what's called a mineral trick, which is if you right click a worker on minerals, even if something is blocking the ramp, like a worker like that, a zealot on hold position, not a hard wall in with buildings, but if a zealot's blocking the ramp like that, a hold positioned unit, a drone or any other worker clicked on a mineral will walk through. That's called the mineral trick. Cannon rushers will use this to help have their probes escape or run through packs of units. If you've ever been vexed by someone cannon rushing you and it seems like, well, how did they just like rush, like I had them surrounded and they escaped, like how did they do that? That's called a mineral trick, and that's worth noting because Combat X is exceptionally aggressive and would cannon rush so often that he even had a nickname for his cannons, the combat cannons. And I remember one time Combat played at a LAN and he got disqualified because he was like cannon rushing some poor Diamond League bastard and had him dead and literally walked over to his computer to talk shit to him in real life. But like he needed to go build like a couple cannons to kill his last building, as Combat X described it. Yeah, I was fucking newbie dead and I had to walk over to my computer to build a couple more combat cannons after I cheesed him easy and they fucking disqualified me, I fucking newbies. But for a guy like Combat, he would do stuff like that. You hear a name like Firebat Hero in the Korean scene, or like a name like John Rocker in baseball. Guys who were such a firebrand and really pissed people off and were almost like on a wrestling level. I mean, look at this filth he's typing in chat. The guy's an animal, dude. Idra rapidly expanding his creep here, and notice combat's going 3-gate. There were two schools of thought when it came to expanding in this era, early 2011, as Idra fails to pick the probe off. Nice micro there by Combat Easy. The two schools of thought were 1-gate expand, and then for maps that had a big choke like Xel'Naga and Metalopolis, the thought was 3-gate expand. Forge Fast Expand did not come into the meta until 2012. If you opened Forge, it was a cannon rush opener, and early in the game, Idra drone scouted, he mineral tricked a drone through and saw, okay, it's standard gate opener. When you play a guy like Combat X, there are, I mean, just look at this lowbrow filth. There are a plethora of things that you have to consistently account for. You have to understand that a guy like Combat, he's going to try to get every little edge, not just verbally, but he's also going to try to sneak expansions rapidly, go for surprise tech, proxy tech, be in your face early and often, and that's mentally and in the game. Bane Nest finishes here for the Kraken. Notice he boxed over his workers there. You know, if you know, you know, only old heads get it, because before Heart of the Swarm there was no worker count over the hatcheries, so you had to naturally know to like box your workers and know how many to look for, which was 16 by the way. And it was often thought like 18 would be okay too, especially with Zerg before your third was done. But that's what we see Idra do. He's counting his drones. And Heart of the Swarm, that patch they made to put the worker numbers over the hatcheries, I mean obviously in the Nexus and the command centers too, great patch. That's the sort of thing that I love, because in reality, that's not like that makes the game more friendly for newbies in the sense that if you're bad at the game, you're going to get undeserved wins. It makes the game friendly for newbies because everyone who's ever played StarCraft asks themselves, like, or at least if you have a brain and you're not just cheesing, everyone asks themselves at some point, like, so what's optimal saturation? You've got to understand, guys, if you started playing in HOTS or later, whenever you oversaturate a base and the text turns red, it says like 17 out of 16 workers and it's red, that's like screaming at you like, oh, you've got too many workers here. You gotta understand, back in Wings we didn't have that, and most of us had little Brood War pedigree and little RTS experience. For many of us, StarCraft 2 is our first RTS that we played competitively, and I'm not really counting like me playing Red Alert 2 against the computer. Let's just be honest. For those of you who have played RTS Online, which is the whole audience of this video, you know how different it is. Oh, I'm gonna play the campaign RTS. Oh, I beat the campaign. I'm feeling myself. Let me try multiplayer. And it's like, oh my god. It's like seeing a really good fastball. It's unbelievable. Idra researching +2 attack for his Lings and Banes. Remember, if you get +2 attack, your Banelings will devastate probe lines. And oftentimes we will see people use that little back path on Xel'Naga to try to harass the natural. Oftentimes in StarCraft there are certain upgrades that interact with each other. And what I mean by that is, yeah, like +1 is always good for Protoss, right? But if you get +1 and go Zealots against Lings, then the Zealots will need 2 swipes as opposed to an extra set of swipes to kill the Lings. They'll 2-shot the Lings. So if you're doing a +1 Zealot build and the Zerg lacks Carapace, you will win the game or win the engagement in an extremely crushing way that is more severe than, say, if you had +1 Stalkers with, like, let's think the same amount of value here. Point being is that in StarCraft, certain upgrades interact with other upgrades in a very special, like, prominent way that you see displayed in the game. The macro machine flooding drones here, Combat pressing out on the map, being very intelligent as far as knowing that he needs to pressure Zerg and prevent Idra from just flooding drones. He's being more oppressive out on the map than he was in that Typhon Peaks game. Idra spreading his army around. Remember, the meta of this era, the Wings of Liberty era, it was all about the force field. Protoss is almost always going to tech into Colossus as their sort of mid-game answer to needing Splash. Storm was not very popular at this time. Charge you needed 200 for. The eco ramp-up was slower, not just with the 6 worker start, but with the AI of the workers as well. Idra with about 58 workers here, he's going to cut and start to flood Ling Bane, and he's going to pressure Combat's gold. He knows that if Combat gets set up here, it's going to be very difficult. get some cannons up there, get some sentries, and with this many sentries, you can really dominate the map as TOS. Remember, no Ravager in this era. 2011 XSplit recording. Shout out to all my fans who were in the comments of the last video. I love you guys. I knew when I pumped that one out that the real ones would feel it in their souls, and sure enough, it happened. For those of you that don't leave comments, I encourage you to subscribe, like, and maybe leave a comment. And I oftentimes at the end of my videos say easy. That's an old Combat X fit. Easy. As Combat's pressuring the middle of the map here, the rocks are still up for Idra, so there's a huge choke in the middle that he doesn't want. He runs up on Combat and tries to bait force fields, and Combat's so busy talking shit that he misses his force fields. That's so funny. That's like the meta of playing a shit talker, as we see after Idra's Spire finished, he went into Corruptor, and even though we haven't seen Colossus, Idra's sort of assuming Combat doesn't really have the micro or macro or intelligence to play any other style. The Colossus Death Ball was seen as one of the easiest and most powerful things to do in all of Wings of Liberty, as Combat's trying to take another base. Xel'Naga, a two-player map, was relatively open in the middle, but not very vast. It was a square map. Whereas if you look at all the maps that are like top left, bottom right now, they're more rectangular, longer. Idra screaming in here upon Combat X, who just doesn't have any army. Where the hell is he? And the Kraken's got a plan for this rowdy bitch like Holly Holmes boxing coach, as Combat Easy is getting rolled over here, and the Kraken says it. Where are your units? Combat might have forgotten his Robo Bay or something. Maybe he's starting Robo Bay 3 through 4 and was waiting for him to kick on like versus Major. I don't know what the hell Combat Easy's doing. And again, this is one of those moments where any player with any amount of self-respect or intelligence like would fucking leave. Like, you wouldn't, like, GG or not GG, but you would get out of the game. He's saying search again. Search again. Why? It's like, after these two games, why would he want to? Noob SC for life. And we're keeping it going here. We're keeping it rolling. I know you guys absolutely love this video. So if you're still hesitating to leave a comment, go ahead and do that.